I'm standing on the roof of a half-finished building in Bangkok, staring at concrete that will never hold my dreams. The construction crane sits motionless like a metal skeleton against the gray sky. No workers, no sounds of hammering or drilling, just silence and a sun-faded banner flapping in the humid wind that reads, "Luxury living coming soon" in English and Thai. My name isn't on any documents down there. My $120,000? Gone. And I haven't seen Sashi in 2 weeks. The concrete beneath my feet is rough and unfinished. I can see the rebar poking through in places, rusty from the monsoon rains. This was supposed to be my balcony. Unit 1204. Corner view. Pool access. She showed me the exact spot where I'd have my morning coffee, watching the sunrise over the Chao Phraya River. "You'll love it here, Jerry," she had said, her hand touching my arm just long enough to make me believe her. I wasn't planning on talking about this tonight, but earlier this week I opened an email from a longtime viewer of this channel. He told me he'd been following along quietly for months, listening to every story, and finally decided it was time to share his own. His words weren't perfect, but they were raw and real, and when I read them, I felt something shift inside me. At first, I felt anger not at him, but at the cruel familiarity of his story, the way hope can be twisted into betrayal. Then came sorrow, a heavy ache in my chest, because I knew exactly how it feels to watch your future crumble like unfinished concrete. And finally, there was gratitude. Gratitude that he trusted me with his pain. Gratitude that these late-night confessions don't just sit in the dark, they connect us. That's why I'm here again tonight. And before I continue, I want to say thank you. To you right now watching this, please leave me a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. I read them all, and it means more than you can imagine. And to those of you who keep coming back, story after story, this is my super thank you. You're the reason I can sit here and tell the truth, even when it hurts. Please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and join the conversation below. Because tonight, I'm ready to tell it all. Let me take you back to where it all started. I keep replaying that moment in my head. How genuine she seemed. How her eyes lit up when she talked about my future here. "It's perfect for someone like you," she had whispered. Someone like me. A retired electrical engineer from Perth who sold everything to start over at 66. Someone lonely enough to believe that a beautiful Thai woman half my age could actually care about my happiness. The view from up here isn't what she promised. I can see the river, sure, but it's brown and cluttered with cargo boats. The skyline she described as breathtaking is just a maze of unfinished towers and smog. Everything looks smaller from this height, sadder, more real. I pull out my phone and check my messages again. Nothing. Her number goes straight to an automated Thai voice I can't understand. The real estate office number I called yesterday? Disconnected. The address she gave me for the company headquarters? It's a massage parlor now. My bank account shows 3,247 Australian dollars. That's what's left of 45 years of steady work, careful saving, and a house I should never have sold. I came here to build something. To belong somewhere. To prove to myself that starting over wasn't just a fancy way of saying giving up. Instead, I'm standing on a roof that was never meant for me, holding a phone that will never ring with her voice again. The worst part isn't the money. It's that for 6 months, I actually felt alive again. I woke up excited. I had plans. I had someone who seemed to understand that being alone doesn't always mean being lonely. She made me believe I wasn't just another desperate old Western man chasing a fantasy in Southeast Asia, but standing here now, looking at the empty construction site below, I know the truth. There was never going to be a condo. Not for me. The only thing that was ever real about this whole mess was how badly I wanted to believe in it. 6 months earlier, I wandered into her real estate office just to escape the Bangkok heat. I had been in Thailand for 2 weeks and felt completely lost. First time without a job in 45 years, first time living outside Australia, first time trying to figure out who I was when I wasn't fixing electrical systems or coming home to an empty house in Perth. The office was small but clean, with glossy photos of luxury condominiums covering every wall. Air conditioning hummed quietly, and soft Thai music played in the background. I was just browsing the window displays when she opened the glass door. "You look like someone who's not lost," she said in perfect English, smiling warmly. Just early. I turned around and saw her for the first time. Sashi Thorn, though she immediately told me to call her Sashi, 33 years old, wearing a crisp white blouse and dark slacks that suggested she took her work seriously. Her English was flawless, with just enough of an accent to remind me I was somewhere new and exciting. Early for what? I asked, stepping inside gratefully as the cool air hit my face. For finding what you came here for, she said, closing the door behind me. I'm Sashi. And you're American? British, Australian. Gerald Maddox, but everyone calls me Jerry. Jerry, she repeated, like she was testing how it sounded. I like that. Strong name. You just retired? I nodded, surprised by how directly she read me. How did you know? You have the look, she said, pouring 2 glasses of cold water from a dispenser in the corner. Confident but searching. Most people your age who come here are either running from something or looking for something. You seem like the looking type. She handed me the water and gestured to a comfortable chair across from her desk. I sat down, grateful for someone who seemed genuinely interested in talking. I sold my house in Perth last month, I found myself saying. Figured it was time to try something different. Divorce? She asked gently. 2 of them, actually. I laughed, though it came out more bitter than I intended. Turns out I'm better with electrical circuits than human relationships. Circuits are predictable, she said, leaning back in her chair. People are more interesting. What kind of different are you looking for? I had been asking myself that question for months, but somehow, sitting in her office, the answer came easily. I want to wake up excited about something again. I want to build something that matters. And I want to stop feeling like I'm just waiting around to get old. Sashi smiled and opened a folder on her desk. Then you definitely came to the right place. Thailand is perfect for people who want to start over, especially people with good instincts about investment. She showed me photos of half-built high-rises along the river, modern glass towers with infinity pools and rooftop gardens. Everything looked clean and new and possible. The expat community here is growing every year, she explained. Smart investors are getting in early, before prices go crazy like they did in Singapore or Hong Kong. I'm not really an investor, I said. I'm just looking for a place to call home. Same thing, she said, her eyes lighting up. The best investments are the ones you can live in. You get a beautiful home and watch your money grow at the same time. We talked for over an hour. She asked about my work in Australia, my family, what I like to do in my free time. She seemed genuinely curious, not just making small talk. When I mentioned that I had always wanted to learn photography, she immediately pulled up photos on her laptop. Look at this view, she said, turning the screen toward me. This is from the 22nd floor of our newest project. Can you imagine taking sunset photos from here every evening? I could imagine it. For the first time in months, I could actually picture myself somewhere specific, doing something I enjoyed. It's beautiful, I said. It's almost sold out, she said quietly, like she was sharing a secret. But I might be able to hold a unit for someone serious. Someone who understands what we're building here isn't just condominiums. It's a community. When I finally left her office 2 hours later, I had her business card and a promise to call her the next day. Walking back to my small hotel room, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my second divorce. Hope. Not the desperate kind that makes you do stupid things, but the quiet kind that makes you believe good things might actually be possible. That night, I called my son Mark in Melbourne for the first time in 3 months. Dad, he said, surprised to hear from me. How's Thailand treating you? I think I found something, son, I told him. I think I might actually stay. The next morning, Sashi picked me up at my hotel in a spotless white Toyota. She wore a light blue dress that made her look professional and approachable at the same time. I had spent the night thinking about our conversation, and part of me worried I had been too eager, too obvious about how lonely I felt. But when she smiled and said good morning, all my concerns disappeared. Ready to see your future home? She asked as I buckled my seatbelt. We drove through Bangkok's chaotic traffic toward a gleaming office tower in the Siloam district. She talked easily about the city, pointing out landmarks and explaining which neighborhoods were growing fastest. Her knowledge seemed genuine, not like a memorized sales pitch. The showroom occupied an entire floor of the building. As soon as the elevator doors opened, I could see why she was confident. The space was stunning. Scale models of luxury high-rises filled glass display cases, surrounded by interior design samples that looked like something from a magazine. Everything was lit perfectly, designed to make you imagine yourself living there. This is our flagship development, she said, leading me to a detailed model in the center of the room. River Gardens, Bangkok. 42 stories. Only 120 units total. The model was incredible. Tiny balconies overlooked a miniature version of the Chao Phraya River. LED lights simulated the pool area and rooftop garden. Even the parking garage was perfectly detailed. We're building for discerning international buyers, she continued. People who want luxury but also community. Every floor has a common area for socializing. There's a fitness center, library, concierge service. I walked around the model slowly, trying to imagine which unit might be mine. What's the timeline? I asked. 18 months to completion, she said. But the pre-construction prices are only available for another 2 weeks. After that, everything goes up 30%. She led me to a comfortable seating area where another agent had prepared coffee and pastries. On the coffee table were thick brochures with professional photography and detailed floor plans. Tell me about your budget, Jerry, she said, settling into the chair across from me. I want to make sure we find something perfect for you. I had been thinking about this since our conversation yesterday. I've got about 150,000 Australian dollars from the house sale. I was planning to keep some in savings, but if the investment potential is as good as you say, it is, she said firmly. Our international clients typically see 20 to 30% appreciation in the first 3 years. But money aside, what kind of space makes you happy? We went through the floor plans together. She had an amazing ability to help me picture myself in each layout. The 1-bedroom units felt too small. The 3-bedroom units seemed like more space than I needed. But when we looked at the 2-bedroom corner units, something clicked. You could use the 2nd bedroom as a photography studio, she suggested. And look at this balcony, southeast exposure, perfect morning light. She showed me interior photos of the model unit. Clean lines, modern finishes, floor-to-ceiling windows that made the space feel enormous. The kitchen had granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. The master bathroom featured a soaking tub and separate shower. This is Unit 1204, she said, pointing to the exact location on the model. 12th floor, corner position. It's the last one at the pre-construction price. How much? I asked. For you? 120,000 Australian dollars. That includes all appliances, 2 parking spaces, and access to all building amenities. I stared at the floor plan, trying to process the numbers. It was most of my savings, but if the appreciation potential was real, it would be the smartest financial decision I had ever made. More importantly, it felt right. I could see myself living there, building a new life there. There is one thing, she said, her voice becoming more serious. Because this is pre-construction, we need 50% down to hold the unit. The other 50% isn't due until 6 months before completion. 50% down? 60,000 now, 60,000 later. It protects both of us. You lock in the price, and we guarantee your unit won't be sold to someone else. I thought about my bank account. 60,000 Australian dollars was a significant commitment, but I had the money. And everything she had shown me suggested this was a legitimate opportunity. I need to think about it overnight, I said. Of course, she said, though I caught a flicker of concern in her eyes. But Jerry, I have to be honest with you. There's another buyer looking at this same unit. If you're serious about it, I'd hate for you to lose it over one day. That evening, I sat in my hotel room with the brochures spread across the bed. The photos were beautiful. The floor plans made sense. The location seemed ideal. I called the development company's main number and got a professional-sounding receptionist who confirmed that Sashi worked there and that River Gardens Bangkok was their current flagship project. Everything checked out. For the first time in years, I felt like I was making a decision based on possibility instead of fear. The next morning, I called Sashi and told her I wanted the unit. I knew you would, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You have good instincts, Jerry. This is going to change your life. After I signed the initial paperwork and wired the $60,000 deposit, everything changed between Sashi and me. She started calling me in the evenings just to check how I was settling into Bangkok. What began as professional courtesy gradually became something that felt more personal. How was your day? She would ask, and actually wait to hear my answer. Lonely, I admitted one evening during our 3rd week of regular calls. I'm not used to having nowhere to be. You have somewhere to be, she said softly. You have dinner with me tomorrow night. I met her at a small Thai restaurant in Chinatown that tourists never find. She had changed from her usual professional attire into a simple black dress that made her look younger and more relaxed. When she saw me, she stood up and hugged me briefly, something she had never done before. You look handsome, she said as we sat down. More relaxed than when I first met you. I feel more relaxed, I said, though I was actually nervous. This felt like a date, not a business dinner. Thank you for suggesting this place. My grandmother used to bring me here when I was little, she said, scanning the menu. It's not fancy, but the food is authentic. We ordered together, and she helped me navigate dishes I had never tried. When the food arrived, she served me first, a gesture that seemed both natural and intimate. Can I ask you something personal? She said as we ate. Sure. Why did your marriages end? It wasn't the question I expected, but her tone was gentle, genuinely curious rather than nosy. The first one ended because I worked too much, I said. The second one ended because I worked too much and she found someone who didn't. Do you regret it? The working too much part? I thought about it while I chewed. I regret not figuring out how to be present for someone I cared about. But I don't regret the work itself. It gave me purpose. And now? What gives you purpose now? It was a harder question than it sounded. I'm still figuring that out, I said. This move to Thailand, buying the condo, it's all about finding a new kind of purpose, I suppose. She reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. I think you're brave, she said. Most people your age are afraid to start over. Most people my age probably have better sense than I do. Sense is overrated, she laughed. I like your instincts better. After dinner, she drove me back to my hotel, but instead of dropping me off at the entrance, she parked and walked with me to the lobby. Jerry, she said as we stood by the elevators. I want to tell you something, but it's going to sound unprofessional. I waited, my heart beating faster than it should have. I don't usually do this with clients, she said, looking at the floor. Actually, I never do this with clients. But I like spending time with you. You're different from most foreign men who come here. Different how? You listen, she said simply. And you don't make assumptions about who I am or what I want. The elevator arrived, but neither of us moved toward it. Would you like to have coffee tomorrow? I asked. Yes, she said, smiling. But not at the office, somewhere we can just talk. Over the next month, our coffee meetings became a routine. Every few days, we would meet at different cafes around Bangkok. She showed me parts of the city I never would have found on my own. Hidden markets, quiet temples, rooftop bars where locals went to escape the heat. Our conversations grew more intimate. She told me about growing up in a small town north of Bangkok, being the first person in her family to go to university, working her way up in the real estate business by being smarter and more determined than her competition. I've been focused on work for 5 years, she told me one afternoon as we sat in a coffee shop near her apartment. No serious relationships, no distractions, just building my career. And now? I asked. Now, I meet this Australian man who makes me want to slow down a little, she said, looking directly at me. You're my lucky one, Jerry. That evening, she invited me to her apartment. It was modest but beautifully decorated, with photos of her family and artwork from local artists. She cooked dinner for me, something simple but delicious, and we sat on her small balcony talking until nearly midnight. I haven't been this happy in a long time, she told me as I prepared to leave. Neither have I said, and meant it completely. She walked me to the door and kissed me goodnight. Nothing dramatic or overly passionate, just a gentle kiss that felt like a promise of something good developing between us. Driving back to my hotel in a taxi, I found myself thinking about the future in ways I hadn't in years. Maybe I could build something here that was about more than just real estate. Maybe I could build a life with someone who understood that starting over at 66 wasn't giving up, it was finally getting started. 2 days later, Sashi called me with news about the construction. They're ready to break ground, she said excitedly. The final permits came through. Would you like to visit the site and see where your new home is going to be built? Sashi picked me up on a cloudy Thursday morning, unusually quiet during the drive to the construction site. When I asked if everything was okay, she said she was just nervous about showing me the property. Why nervous? I asked. Because this makes it real, she said, glancing at me as she navigated through traffic. Once you see the actual land, you'll know this isn't just dreams and floor plans anymore. The site was about 20 minutes from downtown Bangkok, in an area that felt like it was caught between industrial and residential development. She parked on a side street and led me to a chain-link fence surrounding a large empty lot. "Here it is," she said, spreading her arms toward the vacant land. "Your future home." I stared through the fence at dirt and weeds. No construction equipment, no workers. No sign that anyone had done anything more than clear the land. A small, weathered sign in Thai hung on the fence, but I couldn't read it. "It's bigger than I expected," I said, trying to sound positive. "The foundation work starts next week," she said quickly. "They only got the final environmental clearance yesterday. Thai construction moves slower than Australian construction, but once it starts, it goes fast." She pulled out a folder of documents and spread them on the hood of her car. Site plans, building permits, environmental assessments, all with official-looking stamps and signatures. Everything seemed legitimate, though I couldn't read the Thai text. "See this?" She pointed to a plot diagram. "Your unit will be right here, southeast corner, perfect river view once the building goes up." I studied the papers, trying to match what I saw on the diagrams with the empty lot in front of us. It was hard to visualize, but the documentation looked professional and complete. "When do you think I'll be able to move in?" I asked. 18 months from groundbreaking, she said, so probably early next year if everything stays on schedule. A security guard approached us from a small trailer at the edge of the property. He spoke to Sashi in rapid Thai, gesturing toward the fence and then toward us. She responded calmly, showing him some papers from her folder. "What's he saying?" I asked. "Just checking that we have permission to be here," she said after finishing her conversation with the guard. "Standard security protocol." The guard seemed satisfied and walked back to his trailer, but something about the interaction felt odd. His tone had been more questioning than routine, and Sassy's explanation came a little too quickly. "Can we walk around the perimeter?" I asked. "The ground is muddy from the rain," she said, looking at her shoes, "and we should probably get back. I have another client appointment this afternoon." As we drove away, I found myself looking back at the empty lot. It was hard to imagine a 42-story luxury tower rising from that patch of dirt and weeds, but construction sites always looked unpromising before the actual building began. That evening, Sashi and I had dinner at her apartment again. She seemed more relaxed than she had been during the site visit, back to her usual warm and engaging self. "Were you disappointed by the construction site?" she asked as we shared a bottle of wine on her balcony. "Not disappointed," I said carefully. "Just trying to visualize how it's all going to come together." "That's the hardest part about pre-construction investment," she said. "You have to trust the vision before you can see the reality, but that's also why the returns are so good for early investors." She leaned against me as we sat on her small couch, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. This felt right, this quiet intimacy, this sense that we were building something together. "Jerry," she said after a long, comfortable silence, "I need to tell you something about the project financing." My stomach tightened slightly. "What about it?" "The developer is offering an incentive for investors who can complete their full payment early," she said. "If you can wire the remaining $60,000 in the next month instead of waiting until next year, they'll upgrade your unit to premium finishes at no additional cost." "What kind of premium finishes?" "Hardwood floors instead of tile, granite countertops instead of laminate, premium appliances, custom bathroom fixtures. Probably adds $20,000 in value." I thought about my bank account. I had the money, but paying the full amount now would leave me with very little savings until I found some kind of income in Bangkok. "It's a good deal," she continued. "But I understand if you want to stick to the original payment schedule. How long do I have to decide?" 2 weeks, she said. "But Jerry, I want you to know that I'm not pushing this because of my commission. I'm telling you because I care about you getting the best possible value." Later that night, I lay in my hotel bed thinking about the decision. The upgrade offer sounded legitimate, and if I trusted Sashi about the investment potential of the property, paying early would maximize my returns. More importantly, it would demonstrate my commitment to this new life I was building. The next morning, I called my bank in Perth and arranged to wire the additional $60,000 to the development company's account. When I told Sashi, she kissed me more passionately than she ever had before. "You won't regret this," she whispered. "We're going to build something beautiful together." 3 months later, I was living in a small furnished apartment near Sassy's office, officially a resident of Bangkok. We had settled into a comfortable routine of dinners together 3 nights a week, weekend trips to different parts of Thailand, and regular visits to her apartment that felt more and more like a relationship and less like an arrangement. I had even started taking the photography classes she had suggested, learning to capture Bangkok's street life and temple architecture. For the first time since my retirement, I felt like I had purpose and direction. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was editing photos from our recent trip to Ayutthaya. Jerry. Sashi's voice sounded stressed. I have some news about River Gardens. Good news or bad news? I asked, though her tone already told me. Complicated news, she said. There's been a delay with the construction schedule. I felt my chest tighten. What kind of delay? The city engineering department flagged some issues with the foundation design, she explained. Nothing serious, just bureaucratic complications. But it's going to push the completion date back by about 6 months. I walked to my window and looked out at Bangkok's sprawling skyline. Somewhere out there was the empty lot where my future home was supposed to be rising from the ground. So instead of early next year, we're looking at mid-year? Probably, she said. I'm sorry, Jerry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. These things happen with construction projects, I said, trying to sound reasonable. Is there anything I need to do? No, the delay doesn't change anything for the investors. Your unit is still guaranteed. All the finishes we discussed are still included. That evening, she came to my apartment with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of wine. She seemed genuinely upset about the delay, apologizing repeatedly and explaining how stressful it was to deliver disappointing news to her clients. I feel like I let you down, she said as we ate. You didn't let me down, I assured her. You don't control city bureaucracy. But I should have anticipated this kind of delay, she said. I've been selling Thai real estate for 5 years. I should have warned you that these projects never finish on schedule. She leaned against me on my small couch, and I could feel the tension in her shoulders. Are you dealing with this kind of stress from other clients too? I asked. All of them, she sighed. Foreign investors get especially upset about delays. Some of them think I'm personally responsible for every permit and inspection. That must be exhausting. It is, she said quietly. Sometimes I think about getting out of real estate entirely, maybe opening a small restaurant or working for a tourism company. I kissed the top of her head and held her closer. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Even if I'm not your real estate agent anymore? Especially then, I said, and meant it. Over the following weeks, I noticed changes in Sashi's behavior. She seemed distracted during our dinners, frequently checking her phone and apologizing for work emergencies. She canceled 2 weekend trips because of client meetings she couldn't reschedule. The delay has everyone panicking, she explained. I'm spending half my time just managing worried investors. Including me? I asked. You're the least worried of all of them, she said, squeezing my hand. That's one of the things I love about you. You understand that good things take time. One evening in late October, she called to cancel our dinner plans. I have to drive out to the construction site with another investor, she said. He's threatening to demand his money back if he doesn't see actual progress. Can I come with you? I asked. I haven't seen the site since that first visit. There was a pause. It's going to be boring, she said finally, just dealing with an angry client and looking at dirt. I don't mind. We could have a late dinner afterward. Maybe next time, she said. This guy requires my full attention. Rain check? After we hung up, I realized it had been over 2 months since I had seen any documentation about the project. No updated construction timelines, no progress reports, no communication from the development company itself. All my information was coming through Sashi. The next day, I decided to drive out to the construction site myself. I still had the address from our original visit, and I wanted to see if there had been any progress since the foundation issues were supposedly resolved. The chain link fence was still there, but it looked different, newer. The small sign in Thai had been replaced with a larger one that included English text. Property available for development. Contact Bangkok Land Holdings for details. I walked around the perimeter of the fence, looking for any sign of construction activity. The lot was exactly as I remembered it. Empty dirt and weeds. No equipment. No materials. No indication that anyone had done any work in the 3 months since my initial visit. The security guard trailer was gone. I stood there for 20 minutes, trying to understand what I was seeing. Maybe this was normal for Thai construction projects. Maybe the real work happened in phases I didn't understand. Maybe the new sign was just standard procedure during permit delays. But standing there alone, looking at nothing, I felt the first real flutter of doubt in my stomach. That evening, I didn't mention my visit to the site when Sashi called. "How did it go with your difficult client?" I asked instead. "Exhausting," she said, but I managed to calm him down. "Some people just don't understand how development works in Thailand." "Did you actually go to the construction site?" "Of course," she said. "Why would you ask that?" "Just curious about whether there's been any visible progress." "Small progress," she said. "Nothing dramatic yet, but the foundation team is finally mobilizing." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But for the first time since I had met Sashi, her words felt carefully chosen rather than spontaneous. December arrived with cooler weather and growing silence from Sashi. Our regular dinners became weekly dinners, then occasional dinners. She was always apologetic, always explaining about work stress and difficult clients, but her warmth seemed forced now, like she was performing our relationship rather than living it. "I think I need some space to sort out this work situation," she told me during what would be our last dinner together. "It's not fair to you when I'm this distracted. We can work through it together," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." "I know," she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Just give me a few weeks to get caught up with everything." A few weeks became a month. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and my text messages got shorter and shorter responses until they got no responses at all. On January 15th, I decided to visit her office. The building was the same, but when I got to the floor where her real estate company had been, the space was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no wall decorations, no signs that anyone had ever conducted business there. I found the building manager on the ground floor, a middle-aged Thai man who spoke reasonable English. "The real estate office on the 19th floor," I said. "Do you know where they moved?" He looked at me with genuine confusion. "No real estate office," he said. "That space has been empty for 6 months." 6 months? But I was there in November. Sasathorn Lurchai, she worked there. He shook his head. "No one works there. Empty space, you want to see?" He took me back upstairs and unlocked the office. The space was completely vacant, with clean carpet and fresh paint. It looked like it had been empty for much longer than 6 months. "Are you sure about the timeline?" I asked. "Very sure," he said. "We show this space to new tenants every week. Empty since August." I drove directly to the construction site, though I already knew what I would find. The same empty lot, the same chain link fence, the same sign advertising development opportunities. But this time, I noticed something else. The address on the sign didn't match the address Sashi had given me for the River Gardens project. I took photos of everything with my phone, then drove to the Bangkok Land Holdings office listed on the sign. Their office was real, occupied, and staffed with people who spoke English. "River Gardens Bangkok?" the receptionist repeated when I asked about the project. "I'm sorry, we don't have any project by that name." "What about this address?" I showed her the location of the construction site. She looked it up on her computer. "That property is available for purchase or lease," she said, "but there's no approved development plan for it. Has anyone been showing it to potential investors?" "Not through our office," she said. "If someone is claiming to represent us, you should report it to the police." I sat in my car outside their office for an hour, trying to process what I had learned. The office where I met Sashi had been empty for months. The construction site had never had an approved development plan. River Gardens Bangkok didn't exist. That evening, I sat in my small apartment with every document Sashi had given me spread across my kitchen table: building permits, architectural plans, financing agreements, payment confirmations. All of it looked professional and legitimate. I called the phone numbers on the letterheads. Half of them were disconnected. The other half went to businesses that had never heard of River Gardens Bangkok or Sasathorn Lurchai. I spent the next 3 days trying to trace my wire transfers. The bank account where I had sent my money belonged to a company called Thai Property Solutions, which had been dissolved 6 months ago. The money had been transferred out of that account within days of my deposits and disappeared into a web of smaller accounts that my bank couldn't trace without a police investigation. On the 4th day, I finally called the tourist police. The officer who took my report was professional but not encouraging. "This happens more often than you might think," he told me. Foreign retirees are attractive targets because they have savings and want to believe they can build a new life here. Did I just lose everything? I asked. Probably, he said gently. These operations are sophisticated. By the time victims realize they've been defrauded, the money is usually gone, and the perpetrators have moved on. He gave me a case number and explained that they would investigate, but he made it clear that recovering stolen money in international fraud cases was extremely unlikely. Was any of it real? I asked. The relationship, the conversations, any of it? He looked at me with genuine sympathy. I don't know, he said. Some of these scammers are very good at making the emotional connection feel genuine. It's part of what makes them effective. That night, I called my son Mark in Melbourne for the first time since I had arrived in Thailand. Dad, he said, surprised. How's the condo coming along? I couldn't find the words to explain what had happened. There's been a complication, I said finally. What kind of complication? The kind where I might need to come home soon. There was a long pause. Dad, what's going on? I made some mistakes, son. Big ones. Are you okay? Are you safe? I'm safe, I said, though I wasn't sure that was entirely true. But I'm not okay. I didn't tell him about the money. I couldn't bear to hear him say what I already knew, that I had been a fool to trust so completely, to believe so easily, to want something so badly that I ignored every warning sign. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief note. Jerry, I'm sorry it had to end this way. You're a good man who deserved better. Don't try to find me. Take care of yourself. S. I read the note 5 times, looking for some clue about her real feelings, some indication that our months together had meant something to her beyond the money. But there was nothing except polite finality. I kept the note, though I don't know why. For 2 weeks after filing the police report, I barely left my apartment. I had enough money for rent and basic expenses for about 3 months, but not enough to rebuild any kind of life. I spent most of my time lying on my small couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how I had been so completely deceived. The hardest part wasn't losing the money, though that was devastating enough. The hardest part was accepting that every moment of happiness I had felt with Sashi had been manufactured. Every conversation, every laugh, every gentle touch had been calculated to make me trust her more completely. I kept replaying our time together, looking for signs I should have noticed. The way she always steered conversations away from her family, how she never invited me to meet her friends. The fact that I had never seen her apartment building's exterior, only been inside after dark. Small details that seemed unimportant at the time but now felt like glaring warnings. I thought about calling Mark and asking him to wire me money for a plane ticket home, but the shame was too overwhelming. I would have to explain not just that I had lost my life savings, but that I had lost it to a woman who convinced me she cared about me. At 66 years old, I had fallen for the oldest scam in the book. Instead, I started looking for work. My electrical engineering background was useless without Thai certifications, but I found part-time opportunities teaching English to business people and helping other expats navigate bureaucratic requirements. The pay was minimal, but it was enough to cover my basic expenses while I figured out my next move. One afternoon, while walking through a crowded market near my apartment, I saw her. Sashi was sitting at a coffee shop with a Western man about my age, leaning across the table in the same intimate way she used to lean toward me. She was wearing the blue dress I remembered from our early dinners together, and her smile was exactly as warm and engaging as it had been when she first welcomed me into her office. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching her perform the same gestures that had made me feel so special. The way she touched his hand while talking, the way she tilted her head when listening to his stories, the way she made him feel like the most interesting person in the room. He was completely captivated, just as I had been. I wanted to walk over and warn him. I wanted to explain that everything she was telling him was a lie, that the investment opportunity she was probably describing didn't exist, that the woman he was falling for was a carefully constructed illusion. But I didn't. I stood there for 10 minutes, watching her work, and then I walked away. What would I have said? That I was the fool who came before him? That I had been stupid enough to believe that a beautiful 33-year-old woman could genuinely care about a lonely 66-year-old retiree? That everything he was feeling was exactly what I had felt, and it was all designed to separate him from his money? He wouldn't have believed me. I wouldn't have believed me if someone had tried to warn me 6 months earlier. The need to believe that someone understood you, that someone saw something special in you, that someone could help you build the life you had always wanted, that need was stronger than logic or caution. That evening, I finally called Mark and told him everything. "Jesus, Dad," he said after I finished explaining. "How much money?" "All of it," I said. "Everything from the house sale." There was a long silence. "Are you coming home?" "I don't think so," I said, surprising myself with the answer. "Why not?" "Because coming home feels like admitting that this whole thing was a mistake," I said. "And I'm not ready to admit that yet. Even after everything that happened, the woman was a lie," I said. "The investment was a lie. But the feeling that I could start over, that I could build something new, that wasn't a lie. That was real." "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to figure out how to live here honestly," I said, "without the fantasy, without the shortcuts. Just me and whatever life I can actually build with what I have left." After we hung up, I realized that talking to Mark had been the first time I felt hopeful in weeks. Not hopeful about recovering my money or finding Sashi or undoing what had happened. Hopeful about the possibility that I could survive this, and maybe even learn something from it. I had spent my entire adult life being careful, being responsible, making safe choices that protected me from exactly this kind of disaster. And it had led to a retirement that felt like slow death, 2 failed marriages, and an emptiness that made me desperate enough to believe in dreams that were too good to be true. Maybe losing everything wasn't the worst thing that could happen to me. Maybe the worst thing was living so carefully that I never really lived at all. I made a decision that night. I wasn't going home. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life telling this story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting people or taking risks. I was going to stay in Bangkok and figure out who I was when I wasn't hiding behind savings accounts and safety nets. 6 months later, I'm sitting on the small balcony of my studio apartment in a working-class Thai neighborhood where no tourists ever venture. It's not the luxury condo with the river view that Sashi showed me in those glossy brochures, but it's mine. I pay the rent with money I earn teaching English 3 mornings a week and helping elderly expats navigate Thai bureaucracy in the afternoons. My bank account has 37,000 baht in it, about 1,000 Australian dollars. 6 months ago, that would have terrified me. Now it feels like enough. Enough for rent, enough for food, enough for the simple life I've built without anyone's help or promises. The balcony faces east, which means I get beautiful morning light for the photography I've continued learning. I wake up at 6, make coffee with a small electric kettle, and sit here watching Bangkok come alive. No construction cranes rising toward a dream that was never real. Just the actual city, with its real problems and real possibilities. I think about Sashi sometimes, but not with anger anymore. Mostly I wonder if she ever thinks about our conversations, if any part of what we shared felt genuine to her. I hope she finds something real eventually, something that doesn't require deceiving lonely people who just want to believe they matter to someone. The shame took months to fade, but it finally has. I understand now that being fooled doesn't make me weak or stupid. It makes me human. I wanted connection badly enough to ignore warning signs. I wanted purpose badly enough to take risks. Those impulses led me to disaster, but they also led me to courage I didn't know I had. Yesterday, I got an email from a woman named Jennifer, an Australian widow in her early 60s who's thinking about retiring to Thailand. She found my contact information through one of the expat forums where I sometimes answer questions about living here honestly. "I've been reading about real estate scams targeting foreign retirees," she wrote. "I'm wondering if you could tell me what warning signs to watch for." I spent an hour crafting my response, trying to explain that the warning signs aren't always obvious because good scammers make everything seem legitimate. The real protection comes from understanding why you're vulnerable in the first place. The loneliness makes you grateful when someone pays attention to you. I wrote, "The desire for a fresh start makes you want to believe that good opportunities exist. The fear that you're running out of time makes you rush decisions that should be made slowly." I told her about the importance of independent verification, about never wiring money based solely on someone else's assurances, about the difference between calculated risks and desperate hopes. But I also told her not to let fear keep her from taking any risks at all. "I lost my life savings to a scam," I wrote. "But I gained something too. I learned that I'm tougher than I thought. I learned that I can build a life from nothing if I have to. I learned that happiness doesn't require the things I thought it required." This morning she wrote back, Thank you for being so honest. Would you be willing to meet for coffee if I decide to visit Bangkok? I'd like to hear more about what it's really like to start over there. I'm going to say yes. Not because I'm looking for romance or companionship, though both would be welcome if they developed naturally, but because helping someone else navigate this transition honestly feels like a way to give meaning to what happened to me. The coffee vendor down the street knows my name now. The woman who runs the small restaurant where I eat dinner most evenings always asks about my day. The older Thai man who lives in the apartment next to mine has started teaching me basic phrases in Thai while I help him practice his English. These relationships aren't dramatic or passionate, but they're real. They exist because we're neighbors, because we see each other regularly, because we've chosen to be kind to each other for no reason other than basic human decency. That's what I was really looking for when I came to Thailand, though I didn't understand it at the time. Not luxury or investment returns or romantic adventure, just the sense that I belonged somewhere, that my presence mattered to someone, that I could contribute something useful to the world around me. I don't need a 42-story tower or a woman half my age or a bank account full of Australian dollars to have those things. I just need to show up consistently, treat people with respect, and stay open to the small daily opportunities for connection that I used to overlook when I was focused on bigger dreams. The sun is getting higher now, which means it's time to start my day. I have 2 English students this morning, both middle-aged Thai business people who are working hard to improve their language skills so they can advance in their careers. This afternoon, I'm meeting with Tom, a fellow Australian expat who arrived here 6 months ago and is asking all the same questions I asked when I first got to Bangkok. I won't tell him not to invest in Thai real estate. I won't tell him not to trust anyone or take any risks, but I will tell him what I wish someone had told me, that the best things about living here have nothing to do with the things you think you're coming here to find. The balcony faces east, which means every morning starts with light and possibility. That's enough for me now. That's more than enough.